INISEG, the International Institute for Global Security Studies, has created the INISEG Cast section with the purpose of informing, analyzing, conversing, and discussing in a natural and uncensored way each and every one of the political and social events that happen in society. We are not journalists, but we still believe that we have the power to speak up and educate our audience. Why not deliver a different point of view? No violence, no bad words, no bad intentions. Just be us. We are INISEG Cast, connecting thoughts. I want to welcome to everybody, to our audience, especially to our students for INISEG, the Institution International for Global Security Studies, and special in this second episode of this INISEG Cast, the section that we created with the goal that we can have some relaxed conversation with our guests. And in this episode, we want to welcome a man who has made history in the United States as an immigrant who came to the country from a very young age and whose path in politics has been solid, paved, and with a great future ahead. Manny Santos from Republican Party ran for election to U.S. House to represent Connecticut 5th Congressional District. And he described himself as a full-time analyst in the health insurance industry and a part-time product development engineer. Had the honor of serving as mayor of the city of Meriden from 2013 to 2015 in Connecticut. So welcome, really welcome, Manny, and thank you to be here with us and participate in this section about all the leadership, political and strategy themes that currently we are witness in United States. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Rosanna, and João. It's a pleasure being here and share my thoughts on these current issues. It's my pleasure.
It's our
pleasure. Let me join Roxana's words, and it's a great pleasure and a great honor to have you here.
Yes, well, of course. Also, I introduced João, that is from the house, and of course he is a stable panelist for all these section, and he will put the exactly point of view that we need to see these themes and topic how we want. So thank you, João, to be here one more time. Let's start with this conversation, okay? About your description that I said minutes before, and according your experience, you were a candidate in the midterm election back in 2018 for the 5th House race. So that your viewers know better what is exactly the midterm election and the 5th House, because you run in Connecticut. So we would like to know your experience and your point of view about this running for this path.
So Connecticut is divided up into 5 districts. The population in our state is I believe around 3.5 million people, and for each congressional district that has to there can only be so many numbers of representatives in the U.S. House of Representatives. So every census year, so every 10 years, that might change depending on the population, if we get more people or fewer people. So right now it's about every 710 to 750,000 people you represent as a representative in Congress. In the 5th Congressional District, is made up of several cities. Connecticut has a number of cities. It's a small geographical area, but we have a lot of people. And we also have a lot of farmland, rural, and so it's a very diverse area. And the fifth district is what many have considered as the most conservative because of that mix. And so in 2018, I was asked by a number of people if I would be interested in running for that position. And after I got the blessing and the okay from my boss, which is my wife, once yeah.
That shows how the GOP is so friendly to the equal opportunity, right?
That's right. It's run by women. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Okay. So because it's very important that the family be behind you. This is a huge endeavor, and so once that happened, after a lot of praying, of course, and making sure that this was the right decision, I went ahead and did it. In the midterms, so the midterm is really the midterm of the president's term. The president serves for 4 years, so he was elected in 2016. Traditionally, at the midterm of nearly every modern era president of the United States, the sitting president loses seats in Congress. That's just usually that's what happens. The president comes in 2016, 2018 is the midterm, and then obviously we're in 2020 now. So that's what's meant by midterm elections.
Do you think that we can foreseeing the 2020 election? We are just a few weeks from the big turnout, hopefully. Do you think that based on the 2018 outcomes, we can use that outcome to predict who the winner will be next November 3rd?
Firstly, in 2016, the majority of the polls, I think there was only one poll that got it right out there, were wrong, completely wrong. The president was elected, Donald Trump was elected, and then in 2018, which was a mere 2 years in, there still wasn't this solid belief that he would be able to accomplish everything he said he was going to accomplish. The economy was still, it was bouncing back, but it still wasn't at the level that that a lot of us had wanted to be, and a number of other things. A lot of it, of course, had to do with the lack of progress had to do with the fact that he was fighting Congress. And so a year later, 2019, so last year, we had the greatest economic recovery in modern history. Jobs were coming back, the lowest unemployment across the board of every demographic. So, not to mention a number of other things, some resolved issues overseas. We did not get into another war like we have in previous administrations. We actually pulled troops back home to come back home. So there's a lot of there was a lot of evidence that he was doing well, and there was this groundswell of additional support from his base that expanded. Unfortunately, of course, at the beginning of this year, we had the coronavirus, right? And that has devastated our economy. In spite of that, our economy seems to be picking up again. Record job creations jobs have been created in the last several months. So that's, in a nutshell, the biggest difference between this election and in the midterms in 2018. is that there's a track jobs have been created in the last several months. So that's, in a nutshell, the biggest difference between this election and in the midterms in 2018 is that there's a track record of successes that the president has, that this administration has, and quite frankly, the also all of this Russian collusion that just didn't pan out. And in fact, in the last week or two, there's been some documents that have been unclassified that points the finger at Hillary Clinton in her campaign that started all of this, and President Obama knew it at the time. So more of that is coming out. Unfortunately, the press just refuses to dig into this stuff, and so it's coming out a little at a time. And I think most Americans see what's really happening, and he'll win, and I think he'll do really well.
You think is repeating the situation that the past election, that until the moment that he won, it was a surprise because he was always below the Hillary. So you think that it will be the same situation?
We see it now in some of the polls that are being reported that shows Donald Trump behind in the polls with Biden. But in order to appreciate, or one must understand that the dynamics of the people of the United States and the culture, the cancel culture that's going on right now. And if you are a vocal supporter of President Trump, you're made fun of. They ridicule you. You may get into a fight, as a matter of fact. It's that dramatic, right? And so people just don't want to admit it. They just live their lives, as most Americans do. And come election day, I think many of them are going to vote for President Trump. Now, in this election, we're also, because of the pandemic, there's a lot of absentee voting. So a lot of votes have already occurred, millions across the country. So it'll be interesting. On election day, we won't know who won until possibly several days later. And then, of course, you have the Electoral College that you have to throw in there, which is the way we elect our president. And that will be interesting to watch too, because they meet in I think mid-December. But I don't think the American people are going to accept a week, 2 weeks without knowing who our next president is.
It is important also to process the Pacific transition, right? The peaceful transition of power, to know with some advance or some certainty who the winner is. Well, the United States throughout its history met some difficult challenges on that regard. Remember Bush, Al Gore, and the move to the court to settle the dispute between the two candidates. But you made a very interesting point, the point of the silent majority, which is now, according to you, and I subscribe, and I like to hear that optimistic view, that the silent majority is even more silent and even more majority, right, now. But nowadays, because we are, and a lot of people are familiar with that kind of tricks. So it's very interesting because I have been advocating that the great divide in the United States is not left-right, nor progressives or conservatives, nowadays is between Americanists and globalists. And the way you describe the situation is pretty much, in line what I have been defending. And what, in this regard, do you think that, well, let's consider that the Democrats do not like the outcome, the election outcome. Do you think that they will, let's call, using their language, the Democrats' language, they will assault the Constitution by packing the court or by reforming the Electoral College, by putting major, major challenges and changes in the constitutional system in order to recover the power?
Answer is yes, and it needs a lot of background and explanation to this, because we're not being told what's really happening. To your point, João, and what I alluded to earlier, we've always had differences between Republicans and Democrats, or liberals and conservatives. But we always agreed to a large extent what America should be, what we aspire to be. The difference was how to get there, right? There was a few policy differences and so on, but the objective was always pretty much, we could agree on that we want a United States that looks free, the people are free to make their own decisions, to make their own choices, and free from an oppressive governments, right? The big difference right now is that, and this is what we are seeing day in and day out, we no longer agree, Americans no longer agree what America should be. So not only are our policies different in how to get there, we can't even agree on what America should be. And that's the clash we see, is a more traditional America with more traditional values, hard work, freedom, personal responsibility, financial independence, not relying on the government. And then there's the other side that wants government to make decisions for you, to make the choices that they believe we Americans cannot make on our own, that we need the government to succeed, that we need government, a basic income, we need government to find a job, we need government to provide our health care, we need government to raise our children. So that's what's at stake this election, I believe. And the idea, there's been some talk in the upper echelons of the Democrat Party that if Biden does not win, that is what they're going to do, is try to change the way that the presidency is that the president is elected. And one of those ways is to pack the Supreme Court so that decisions are more, I guess, liberal, in line with their belief, and also possibly change the Constitution and amend it, which I believe will be very difficult. That's so they're going to try to go around the Constitution, and there's not enough talk about the Electoral College and how it relates, or how it compares with other governments in other countries, right? Because there are countries, so everyone seems to think, or used to think, that the president is elected by the people. And they are. The president is elected by representatives of the people, right? And the Electoral College levels it off so that there aren't regionalisms and that there aren't feuds between one part of the country and the other part of the country. And so that the the high population cities and states don't dominate the rest of the country. And so the Electoral College levels that off and gives everyone the same opportunity to have a voice in choosing their president. But there are countries where the president or prime ministers are not elected by the majority of the people, right? England, almost any
The parliamentary,
parliamentary governments, the head of the country is not directly elected by the people. United Kingdom, Canada,
even Portugal, even
Israel, Portugal, I think is the same.
Yeah. Portugal,
So
Israel,
So it's nothing new. It's just that it's an excuse that the far left has solidified in the minds of so many people that it's now affecting how we treat each other and how we practice our political.
Some of these people. Sorry, Joao.
No. Okay.
Those people are criticizing right now that President Trump is not having a clear, powerful message. Do you agree with that? If you were, for example, advisor of him, what do you say to him?
We didn't. Most of us that voted for Donald Trump as our president knew that he was a rough guy. You know that he's bombastic. He's he says he's really plain talk, plain speaking man, but he gets things done. That's what we needed. That's what we want. For years, for decades, we have heard of how people want someone that's not a career politician, that isn't involved in the day in and day outs of Washington, D.C. Give us someone that we can, a guy that we can relate to as far as not being entrenched in the D.C. politics. So Donald Trump comes along, someone we've wanted for decades. He's not beholden to any one particular party or another. He happens to align more with the Republican platform and the Republican principles. He runs as a Republican, an outsider of DC, which I believe, and most of us do, that it is only an outsider can clean up the mess or the swamp in Washington, DC. Donald Trump is that man. He's the only one that can do it. He's the only one that has the wherewithal. Just imagine you being the president with all this animosity, all this opposition from all around you for nearly 4 years. It's incredible. I can relate just a little bit to it when I was mayor of Meriden, and how I was the first Republican elected in Meriden in over 30 years. And I had a Democrat city council that I had to deal with. And so I had to work 2-3 times as hard as anyone else because I was up against everyone. And so this is what the president is going through. And he doesn't say what I would want him to say sometimes, or even how I would want him to say it, but there's no doubt that what he's doing and the policies he's implementing are effective and that providing more freedoms, more liberty, more jobs. After all, if you can't work and earn a good living, your only choice is to be unemployed, rely on someone else, or rely on the government. And that is what the Democrats want us to believe, that we cannot succeed without big government being in our life.
Very also an interesting point. The people criticize a lot about the tone of President Trump and the Twitter
Yeah.
Twitter president,
Yeah,
the tweets, the very harsh and sometimes tough tweets. But the truth is, if were not the Twitter and these direct communication with the people, maybe President Trump would not succeed. I'm not talking about the national federal way or the national level, but even within the GOP, maybe if not the tweet, President Trump would not have won the primary, the GOP primary, because when you are a disruptor, you need to use harsh language in order to disrupt the system. When you want to disrupt the establishment, you have to use disruptor techniques. This is not only in politics, even in counterintelligence majors, even in communication in general. For example, when a newspaper is so well established, you need to break him, and to get to number one, you have to disrupt. You have to use disruptor techniques. And so Trump was very smart. People think that President Trump is, they use some dirty words to describe Trump. It's better not to mention here. But Trump is he's a very intelligent and smart person. He understands very well how to reverse the table, how to reverse the game in favor of him, even when the odds are way low. Manage to get to the surface, to get to the top again, and that requires very intelligence. You need to be very intuitive and to understand. You have to have a great capacity, even in the management of this COVID situation, this virus situation. When President Trump gets to the White House again, how he worked the communication with the spectacle, with the helicopter, and then to go to salute the American flag, and then to publish some video.
Do you think that Trump is doing okay with this virus thing? For example, how he talked, or how he tried to give the people his perspective about the coronavirus and his experience, that it was very short time.
Just really quickly, João's point about being a disruptor is exactly right. You can't go in any place and break into a market, so on, without disrupting something. He is. He doesn't, again, like, he doesn't say what I would want him to say and so on, but we didn't elect him because he was an eloquent speaker, or that we wanted our son to emulate him. No, we elected him in order to fix America, in order to make it great again, right? And whatever it takes, within obviously within moral confines, of course. So and he's done that. The way he's done it may turn off some people, but at the end of the day, he's achieving what he set out to achieve, what we wanted him to achieve. He needs another 4 years to complete some of those some of those goals. With respect to coronavirus, right? The pandemic here in the United States, a vast country, we have different. One region is a little bit different from another. States are different, cities, and so on. But I tell you, in my state of Connecticut, we're doing really well. We don't have. In fact, across the country, I think for the most part, the COVID-19 is under control. There's been a lot of restrictions put in place and so on, And the president's job is not to elect people, regardless of what Kamala Harris said. That is not his job. The media does a great job at doing that. We don't need our president to do it. And his job is to make sure the stuff gets done and that he reassures the American people that he's looking out for us. And he's been able to do that. He continues to do that. I'm of the belief that the restrictions that were put in place, the social distancing, the closing of all these companies, by the way, has put a lot of people out of business, without jobs, and consequently relying on government. But these restrictions early on were very important in order to what you have heard as flattening the curve. The reason we needed to flatten the curve early on is because that curve depicts the how heavily tasked our health system is. So our health system has a particular capacity. Let's say it's right here. If they're getting sick, if the hospitalization and all exceeds that, that's a problem. People die, they don't get treatment, and so on. So the idea of flattening the curve is not to let it go above that capacity. It's to keep it flattened and then deal with it when it's flattened, right? Because then the healthcare system can deal with all of the fallout, the sick and so forth. But that was the only purpose. Initially, our government told us that was going to happen. And that was the only reason for these restrictions and these elimination of our fundamental rights of freedom and freedom of movement and having your own business opened and being an enterprise and earn your own money. That was the only reason. That has continued even up to now. The government has had control, and in some instances, in some states like Connecticut, the governor, one person, makes all the decisions. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. And when they quarantine healthy people, keep us from moving around, that's tyranny. Yeah. Quarantine is when you isolate or otherwise restrict the movement of sick people. That's what we should be doing, not restricting the movement of perfectly healthy people.
And that's very interesting because Manny told that there are a division of power. It's either up, down, and down, up in terms of American federalism. And what the Democrats with these, let's call the opposition of President Trump, are advocating for is the transformation again of the federalist state, reinforcing the federal government, because this would be the pretext to move forward with a gigantic federal state, so-called the federal administrative state, at the expenses of the states. So this pandemic and this narrative that has been put in motion is in order to reinforce, to enlarge the constitutional powers of the federal government. And the second thing is, we heard a lot about the listen to experts, listen to science, science matters. But then we are waiting for scientific evidence that proves that lockdowns, that these restrictions of fundamental rights and liberties, and for a period of time which is way too long for what is acceptable in a constitutional and a rule of law state. They don't have that scientific data, and actually the data is disputable. It's not something that it is out of any reasonable doubt. So it's very interesting because we are told that this is a scientific matter. This is listen to the science situation,
Yeah.
but then they are moving forward a political agenda.
Big reasons that the opposition, or in our case, Democrats, love what's going on to some extent, is because it gives them the reason or the excuse to do the things they've always wanted to do without accountability. And so they go ahead and do it. They love control. They love control, and they love telling us what to do, when to do it. And when they have checks and balances between the legislative branch or the judicial branch, they have a hard time doing that because it's checks and balances in our form of government. In the United States, one thing to keep in mind, and I think across the globe, people don't realize this, is that when the United States was created, it was a union between independent countries. Our states, they're states because every country is a state, but we were independent. Connecticut was independent from New Hampshire, was independent from New York. We had our own 13 colonies that were really, that became states, which are countries. And then a union was created. And they gave up a few rights in order to give the federal country now, a federal government, certain responsibilities, but everything comes back down to the local level, to the states, individual states, and the individual person, the citizen. And that's, so when our federal government, the American government, does certain things, states are usually reluctant to go along with it because it inevitably inevitably means that we lose some of our individual rights. So the further the government is, the worse it is for an individual. So in the United States, we always want most control at the local level. And that means at the municipal, the city, the towns, and the states.
Very interesting to note that there is a contradiction in the, let's call the opposition, because they want more federalism in terms of a big government that can handle this pandemic, this public health situation. But at the same time, they want to dismantle the federalism devices, such as the Electoral College. The Electoral College is a device of the federalism, of the American federalism. So there's this contradiction: big government, social justice, transformation of society, but at the same time to reduce the federalism devices. And the explanation, from my own perspective that I share with you, is because the Democrats know that the demographics in New York or California are favorable, and this is not going to change in the next years. So the demographics in these big states are favorable to the Democrats. So it's better in terms of electoral strategy to dismantle the federalism, although advocating for a big government like a European Union with steroids.
It's when they can't win by the rules, they want to change the rules. And we see that with a lot of the social issues going on, but and it's not only the social issues like healthcare. The there's this huge movement in America to actually the acceptance of socialism, which is not compatible with our Constitution. Our Constitution clearly divides the power, separates power, and gives responsibility to the individual. And there's only just a few things that government should do. And frankly, we can't even do those things right. So then we do something else altogether. But in creating a socialist state, you take over the healthcare system, in which obviously that controls people to a large extent, right? Yeah. You increase poverty through welfare systems, and when you do that, you are now creating a dependency, large constituency dependent on the government. Gun control. So in our Second Amendment, we are responsible as citizens for our own safety. We protect our own property. The government is constituted in order to protect those rights from being violated by someone else, right? And so gun confiscation will probably be in the horizon if Biden and Harris are elected. Removing guns creates a police state. You no longer can defend yourself. You're relying on government to defend you and protect you. The education is certainly being taken over by bureaucrats and what children learn. There's this big movement to eliminate homeschooling, which in the United States was growing at a great rate in the last several years, but last several decades. But in recent years, it's been under Obama. Certainly then has been diminishing. The class warfare that goes on, the continuous assault on our religion, on Christians in particular, on Jews. I mean, these sorts of things create, certainly in my mind and in many other people's mind, a clear movement of the Democrat Party to with a socialist agenda to fundamentally transform the United States into something that it's incompatible with our Constitution. And that's why our Constitution is continuously assaulted by the far left that has taken over the Democrat Party.
Many refer that socialism, the American Constitution, is incompatible with socialism. Socialism is unconstitutional in the United States. But it's very interesting that they realized that, and the strategy was to take over the academia, the constitutional scholar,
and they have,
and create legal theories such as the living constitutionalism, or the blanket constitution, or the cosmic justice.
That's a new one. I hadn't heard that one. Okay.
Yeah, and from that perspective, they can change, the judges and the scholars can change the meaning of the Constitution, and therefore becoming having the power to transform the American Constitution into a socialist one, into a constitution that actually, there are scholars that says that the American Constitution even set out social rights, that the government is obliged constitutionally to give some social entitlements to the citizen, which
But
It doesn't.
regarding this and the last Trump's decision that was really controversial, what do you think about this, that Trump nominate Judge Amy Barrett? And what do you think about this nomination? And has the president that constitutional power? And if it's not, for example, following the Democrats standing on this, is it not a dangerous limitation of presidential authority? What do you think about that?
When a president nominates a constitutionalist juror, they say that they're biased, or that they are, the one right is going to be eliminated over another, and so on, if they interpret the Constitution as it's meant to be interpreted. So they don't want constitutionalists, people who understand and appreciate the Constitution, on the bench. They want people and jurors, justices who want to interpret the Constitution in such a way that they give government or individuals certain rights that we don't have, certain authority that the government has that the Constitution doesn't clearly indicate. The best example I could give of this is Second Amendment. Clearly in our Constitution, in the United States Constitution, it says, for the right of the people to protect themselves and for a well-organized militia, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't know why certain judges seem to have a problem with interpreting shall not be infringed. So certain justices will say, well, this kind of infringement is okay. So that's what we have. We have the Democrats. Let me be clear. When I say Democrats, I mean the leadership of the Democrat Party, those that are elected as Democrats in high positions. Because I have Democrats that I have friends, I have family members that are Democrats. So I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the established Democrat Party, their platform, and what they really want, and those that are in Congress. And the far majority of them want justices that will interpret the Constitution to their liking. And we can't have that in a country that values the rule of law, and where the Constitution is the foundation of everything else, every other law that has been established.
Very using many words, fascinating that they criticizing Trump for doing exactly the same that Obama did, because Obama, in the last year of his tenure as president, his second term, nominated Justice or Judge Garland from Nevada to occupy the seat left by the death of Antonin Scalia. The difference is that they didn't have the majority in the Senate, and now President Trump, the GOP, has majority in the Senate. So imagine if the Democrats had the majority back then in 2016, they would have done this exactly the same, and democracy would be a very democratic gesture. Very democratic would be the normal work of democracy. Now, because it's President Trump, he's fascist.
For why it's different. The other difference is that Obama was not going to be reelected. It was his second term. We were definitely going to get a different president. Okay, fine. The other part of it is that fundamental changes are in the horizon if we do not appoint judges that interpret the Constitution the way it's supposed to, that read the Constitution and what it actually says. And so that is much more important than any kind of due process, or not due process, but any kind of protocol or precedents. We can't violate the law. We can't violate the Constitution. There is nothing that the president or the Senate right now are doing or plan on doing that is unconstitutional, that is not within their rights. But fundamentally, we need a Supreme Court that goes back to its fundamental role, and that's to simply adjudicate suits or cases based solely on what the Constitution says. And unfortunately, we no longer have that because it's more of a popularity contest and making actually. So the last judge that was appointed, who was it? The name escapes me right now, but
Brett Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh went through hell and back with these Democrats that made a mockery out of the Senate hearings, and that's what they want to do. They're going to try to do it with Barrett as well. She's a excellent individual. I'm finding out more about her, but I'm hoping that, you know, this is what's at stake in this election, and as well in the Supreme Court is in fact, what America do we want to have for our children and grandchildren?
Yeah, I would like to get about this Supreme Court situation. Demonstrate another thing is that the Democrats are always tied up, always together. They stuck together and defend no matter what. But the GOP, the Republicans, are very, are not that together. There, there are a lot of Republican parties within the. There's no solidarity or that's not the this. They are not
unity.
So stuck. Yeah. The unity. Unity and predisposition to fight, to act, and
it's something that I've come to realize, especially when I was running for Congress, and the reason for that. Fundamentally, there are core principles that each party has, and or to expand on that each individual has. And so for the most part, Republicans are very individualists. We believe in our personal responsibility, personal abilities. And so it's harder for us to go along with the herd, that herd mentality, right? Mm-hmm. Democrats don't seem to have a problem with that. They'll compromise and, okay, let's just win. I don't care what happens, let's win. The Republicans, to a large extent, are not quite like that. We have strong fundamental beliefs, and we have a hard time giving up one of those 10 beliefs in order to get along with all the other Republicans. We just can't do that for some reason because it's in our DNA. We have a hard time letting go of our individualism, which is what the United States was built on, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why Republicans have a hard time staying together, and to some extent, that's why I kind of admire other countries and their systems, because they have multiple parties. They have countries that are like 15 legitimate parties, and then so you could agree on certain issues with certain parties, and and create compacts and partnership with them because it fits what you believe in. And so in individuals as well, they get, I guess, more choices on what party and what principles to support when there's more than just two parties. Essentially, in the United States, we have the Democrats and Republicans. We also have independents and Green Party and so on. But to the large extent, the two dominating parties are Republicans and Democrats. So if you're not a Democrat, you're a Republican, and vice versa. Rarely are you unaffiliated and do anything.
To try a little bit change these things and go into the future, I would like to know your opinion about United States future. The fight that we watched the other day in the debate about Trump and Biden, do you think that we will watch it again in the next debate between them? What is your feeling about it?
Well, you have to realize that in the past, Republicans have been very reluctant to fight back just as hard as the Democrats were fighting us. And now we have a president that punches twice as hard as the Democrats. And so there is that feeling of yes, finally, yeah, give, the way it's done, it comes across as the
limit a little bit.
Yeah, I guess maybe. But I don't think we're going to see that in the next debate. The next debate next week is a town hall setting, and so it's going to be they're not going to be at a podium, so it's going to be a bit different. It's going to be, I hope, a bit more conversational and so on. Maybe more like what we saw last night with the vice presidential debate. But hopefully a bit more not entertaining, but informative, I guess. Last night wasn't it left a lot to be desired. They just said things, and a lot of it was either false and there was some back and forth, which I enjoy, and I think we're going to see that next week. How it's actually going to play out, I don't know. I'm not up on stage in a debate, which by the way is not an easy thing to do. It's very I've participated in a few debates, and it's not my cup of tea. Some people are very good at it, especially if you have a photographic memory and you can remember stats and things that have happened and policies and back and forth. You do pretty well. And one of the things you'll notice from last night's debate with the vice president debate is how Democrats have a skill set that they emotionally connect with their viewers. They give examples that are very that pull on your heart, and that's what they do. They're very emotional people. They think with their heart instead of their brain, and that gets in the way of the Constitution, right? Because the Constitution is very rigid. You can do this, you can do that, you can't do that, and so that's not very emotional. That's very logical, and so I'm not sure how. Biden doesn't do as good of a job as Kamala Harris. She did excellent with connecting emotionally to the viewers. Pence did a pretty good job at that as well. He has a different cadence. He's more subdued, but I think he did well in connecting emotionally to some extent with the viewers.
Being on stage in this kind of debate is very difficult. You say that there are people who have these memory, photographic memory, visual memory. But on the other side, remember, President Trump demonstrate a great capacity and quality in this kind of debates, because it's not the politics as usual, but those comments and those bottom lines said by the president in a fraction of the second are very powerful, in the sense they are effective, politically effective. And President Trump is very good to react, and the power of intuition. He knows, he understands what is appealing to the base. What Manny was saying, that the Democrats know how to do it. President Trump, in his unique style, also has that kind of capacity. Even that back and forth with the moderator, Chris Wallace, President knew that it was a card that the GOP and his voters would appreciate. And that's a different kind of intelligence, of smart, but is a smart. You have to be a very brave guy with bravado and intelligence to do this kind of thing in a TV motion, right? In a TV with the TV sets, with the cameras and the mics.
The rallies, and in for instance, when Biden has a rally or a get together, a showing someplace, there's a dozen people there, a half a dozen people, and it's at most a couple hundred, right? Wherever Trump goes, there's tens of thousands of people all the time. I was at a hearing in Connecticut a couple of weeks ago. I was at a boat parade on our river,
boat parade.
The Connecticut River, and Trump wasn't even there. It was just a Trump boat parade. At first, we thought it'd be a couple of, several hundred boats and some spectators on land watching it. It turned out to be over 1,000 boats on our river, with Trump flags and music and American flags everywhere, and hundreds of spectators on shore watching all of this. And this was just put together within a week and a half, two at the most. All these people came together. This happens everywhere Trump goes, and everywhere there is a Trump rally, right? A Trump parade or something. There is a huge energy, and if that base, all of those, come out and vote on this election, Trump will win, because you don't have that excitement on Biden's side. You simply don't. And so turning out the base is very, very important. Trump does a great job at that, because we want to preserve an America that we will recognize.
To finish this conversation in one or two words or sentence, who do you think won last night, Harris or Pence?
I think it was a draw. Yeah, at the very beginning, Harris seemed to be winning, but then about mid to 2/3 in, Pence really corrected her on a number of things and pointed out some wonderful arguments to be made. And so at the end of it, I thought it was a draw. The media, of course, isn't going to tell you that. The media, in fact, immediately after I was watching the news, the network news on our local station, and the one clip that they showed was the argument back and forth, in where Kamala Harris says something about, "Excuse me, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking now."
I'm speaking.
Yeah. So out of all of that, and there were some great moments that could have made both candidates look good, they picked that one one particular segment. So you're not going to get a clear picture from the media. But if you were watching it, like I think a lot of people were, you get a different impression.
But in this one, I disagree. I think Mike Pence won because it was more, because I think Kamala did not grow the base, the Democratic base, and I think Pence. I'm not for the record, I'm not a very fan of Mike Pence's style. But I think he fixed the base, and maybe he enlarged the base to the center, some center that does not reflect in the far left. And Kamala has some far left, far left tendencies, and even the smirks and the body language is she over spoken. The body language was way too much. But the most important is to say that I hope that to be, and we will cover the Manny Santos campaign in 2022.
Hey,
right?
that's not supposed to be any announcement.
In 2022.
Oh my God.
And I hope to see you in Congress in 2022. And I hope, and I'm pretty sure more that I'm as optimistic as you are regarding President Trump. You say President Trump will win landslide, and I can tell you that you will win landslide in 2022 in Connecticut, 5th district.
Thank you.
I hope also you can find all your goals in not only in Connecticut, all your feelings that you were telling us now about the Constitution, about what do you like for the people, for the society in general. I hope United States can find the peace and the way to run all these goals, of course, that Trump has in this moment, and I hope for the future as well.
Yeah, as I said, as I have said many times, it's a consequential election, and the future of not only this country, the future of the world depends on the number of voters that come out and vote and make sure we keep America great again, or we keep America great.
Good.
Or as President Trump would say, make America great again.
Again, yeah. Okay, thank you, really.
Thank you.
For being here with us. Support our section that is the beginning of course, we hope that this grow up as well with all your experience that you can share with us. And we're really grateful that you have the time, all your words, all your experience that you share with us. Thank you again.
And I learned a lot.
Yeah,
And I hope the viewers will as well.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts in these important issues, and look forward to continuing this. Thank you.
Yeah, look forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. Siguiendo con las entrevistas de INISEG en este nuevo canal y en esta nueva visión académica que se está realizando desde INISEG para analizar las elecciones presidenciales de Estados Unidos, con el coordinador, el profesor Joao Lemos Estevez, y dentro del área de las relaciones internacionales y las ciencias políticas de INISEG, seguimos entrevistando hoy al congresista norteamericano del Partido Republicano, Manny Santos. Dentro de esta entrevista, coordinada por el profesor Joao Lemos Estevez, algunas de las preguntas que vamos a analizar a continuación, una de ellas es sobre el papel que tuvo el congresista Manny Santos sobre su participación en 2018 para la quinta carrera en la Cámara, en la cual, pues bueno, para los espectadores que sepan mejor lo que es la quinta Cámara, son exactamente esas elecciones de mitad de periodo, y la quinta Cámara, que consiste en Connecticut, cuando él se presentó como congresista. 2 años hay que analizar dentro de esta cuestión que 2 años después del triunfo electoral de Donald Trump, los votantes norteamericanos volvían a las urnas el 6 de noviembre para las elecciones a mitad de periodo, que se sería conocido como las elecciones de mitad de periodo en 2018. En las elecciones intermedias de ese año, los demócratas ganaron la mayoría en la Cámara de Representantes de los Estados Unidos y los republicanos conservaron la mayor parte de los escaños en el Senado. En este caso, Jahana Hayes es la primera mujer afroamericana elegida para representar a Connecticut en la Cámara. Ganó en el 5º distrito del estado con un 56% de los votos proyectados, superando al republicano Manny Santos. Estas elecciones se celebran, podríamos decir, cada 4 años, en noviembre, y se llaman así porque ocurren en la mitad de la legislatura. Los votantes eligen a miembros de la Cámara de Representantes y del Senado, cámaras que conforman el Congreso norteamericano. Actualmente, las 2 cámaras del Congreso están bajo control del Partido Republicano, al que pertenece el presidente Trump. En este caso, los 435 escaños de la Cámara de Representantes están en disputa. Si los demócratas quieren hacerse con el control de la Cámara, tienen que ganar al menos 23 de los escaños que ahora están en poder de los republicanos. Otra de las preguntas, de las cuestiones realizadas por el profesor Joao Lemos a nuestro invitado, el congresista Manny Santos, estaba orientada a cuáles son los principios característicos de los 2 partidos norteamericanos y cómo diferenciar al Partido Republicano del Partido Demócrata. En este caso, el Partido Demócrata y el Partido Republicano son los 2 grandes partidos políticos de Estados Unidos y poseen filosofías e ideas muy diferentes sobre cómo llevar a cabo un gobierno en la nación. La ideología demócrata defiende una mayor intervención del Estado en la economía y sobre todo una filosofía más liberal y de izquierda. La ideología republicana apuesta en una menor actuación del Estado, defiende ideas mucho más conservadoras y la reducción de los impuestos. El Partido Demócrata tiene su origen en las facciones antifederalistas de la época de la independencia de Estados Unidos bajo el dominio británico. Esas facciones fueron organizadas por Thomas Jefferson y James Madison y otros también opositores de los federalistas en 1792. En el caso del Partido Republicano, podríamos decir, el más joven de los partidos, fundado en 1854 por los activistas de la expansión antiesclavista y modernizadora. El Partido Republicano ganó más relevancia con la elección de Abraham Lincoln, el primer presidente republicano. El partido gobernó durante la Guerra Civil Norteamericana de 1861 a 1865 y durante la reconstrucción del país tras el conflicto. Y también podríamos decir que se vio afectado por facciones y escándalos internos a finales del siglo XIX. Una de las diferencias fundamentales entre los ideales de los partidos demócrata y republicano es, digamos, en torno al papel de cómo gestionar el gobierno. Los demócratas defienden, digamos, un papel más activo del gobierno en la sociedad y creen que tal participación puede mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas, además de ayudarlas a alcanzar mayores oportunidades de forma igualitaria. Mientras que, por otro lado, los republicanos tienden a defender un gobierno pequeño, tanto en términos del número de personas empleadas por el gobierno, como en términos del papel y las responsabilidades de este en la sociedad. Ellos ven un gran gobierno como un desperdicio y un obstáculo para hacer que las cosas, su enfoque en el capitalismo, en ese capitalismo darwiniano, en el que las empresas fuertes pues deben sobrevivir en un mercado libre, en lugar, digamos, de influir el gobierno en quien gana o pierde en los negocios a través de la regulación. Otra de las cuestiones planteadas durante la entrevista a Manny Santos fue, digamos, sobre el republicanismo de este presidente Trump, cuáles son las diferencias con otros presidentes republicanos que han gobernado en Estados Unidos, y se hizo, digamos, la alusión al presidente Bush, las principales diferencias entre el presidente Bush y el presidente Trump. Como bien sabemos, los monumentos designados que se han realizado a los presidentes en Estados Unidos, como el monumento a Washington, el Aeropuerto Internacional John Fitzgerald Kennedy de Nueva York o el Lincoln Memorial en Washington, son lugares emblemáticos o monumentos que llevan el nombre de los expresidentes. Nombres que también se utilizan en monumentos conmemorativos, escuelas, bibliotecas y otros sitios del patrimonio norteamericano. Pero Trump llega al despacho Oval con todo un rascacielos a su nombre, la Trump Tower, ubicada en la Quinta Avenida de Manhattan, en la ciudad de Nueva York, que es la sede de su imperio. En Donald Trump o George Bush, ideología y estrategia política, en el legado de estos 2 presidentes de Estados Unidos, cada uno de ellos puede identificarse con un epíteto. Bush con el intervencionismo en el exterior y Trump con el aislacionismo. En el caso del terrorismo, el presidente Bush se decantó por el multilateralismo y por seguir los parámetros del derecho internacional sin que ello pues, significara necesariamente una renuncia al liderazgo norteamericano en los asuntos, podríamos decir, globales, ya que los consideraba a su país como, digamos, una suerte de primos inter pares. El presidente republicano, pues, hubo independencia de encarar la amenaza de Al-Qaeda tras el 11S. Y Donald Trump, frente a esa preventiva propugnada por Bush, el actual presidente norteamericano, se ha decantado por el aislacionismo, al que ha moderado, evidentemente, y ha rodeado de una serie de características distintivas, saliendo sobre todo, en ese sentido, un nacionalismo ultraconservador que tiene como paradigma el America First, el América primero. La idea fundamental de su filosofía es que América debe, digamos, atender a sus propios intereses y al bienestar de sus ciudadanos, dejando de intervenir y prestar ayuda en el exterior cuando ese tipo de intervenciones no le benefician. Finalmente, ya que pese a Trump comparte con Bush una ideología conservadora, que es la del propio partido, las diferencias entre ambos resultan evidentes. Otra de las cuestiones planteadas por el profesor Joao Lemos Estevez a nuestro invitado, el congresista Manny Santos, era, y en este partido demócrata, si realmente cree que pudiera haber convertido en un partido socialista y que ese partido socialista encaminado y escorado por donde va el Partido Demócrata norteamericano pudiera escorarse más hacia la ultraizquierda. A medida que se dispara la carrera por la nominación presidencial de los demócratas en los Estados Unidos, pareciera, digamos, que el partido está girando cada vez más hacia la izquierda. Recordemos que en 2018 el 51% de los demócratas se consideraba izquierdista y solo un 13% se declaró moderado. A solo pocas semanas de que se lleve a cabo la jornada electoral en Estados Unidos, en las calles aumenta la confrontación entre diversos sectores de la sociedad, con un nivel de violencia que no se había atestiguado en un contexto político electoral desde 1968. Al mismo tiempo, la tensión en los medios de comunicación y en las redes sociales sube de tono entre activistas y simpatizantes de los dos principales partidos. Cierto, ya desde el año 2000 se había observado el fenómeno de esa polarización en las diferencias políticas que dividen a la población norteamericana, pero que este año sobre todo se ha disparado la radicalización de las bases partidistas hacia la izquierda. ¿Cómo fue que Estados Unidos, nos podríamos preguntar, y en este caso es una de los análisis que podríamos hacer tras la intervención del congresista Manny Santos a las cuestiones planteadas por el profesor Joao Lemos, de que un país de naturaleza conservadora, que por décadas se había mantenido cómodo entre el centro y la derecha del espectro político, dejó de ser aquel estandarte de la democracia liberal al resto del mundo? ¿Cómo es que un sistema político que se distinguía por su capacidad de excluir a figuras extremistas de la toma de decisiones terminó por ser penetrado por estos mismos actores? ¿Y cómo fue que su población, ajena por generaciones a las pasiones políticas, se dejó seducir por los fanatismos ideológicos de la extrema izquierda, que parece estar abanderando por realmente ese partido demócrata que está girando más hacia ese socialismo de ultraizquierda? Hace un cuarto de siglo, cuando Bill Clinton estaba en la Casa Blanca y gobernaba como un nuevo demócrata, el 25% de ellos se consideraba de izquierda y el 25% conservador. Y un 48% se consideraba en la línea de moderado. Alrededor del año 2000 comenzó esta inclinación demócrata hacia la izquierda, a esa peligrosa izquierda. Es cierto que muchos votantes, especialmente en el sur, alguna vez demócratas conservadores, han cambiado su lealtad al Partido Republicano, pero al mismo tiempo el electorado en su conjunto se ha movido hacia esa izquierda. Recordemos que en el 1994 el 38% de los norteamericanos se consideraban conservadores, en comparación con el 17% de izquierda. Para 2018 la participación conservadora había disminuido un 32%, mientras que la de la izquierda aumentaba 8 puntos. Pero debemos pensar que el fenómeno de reciente ultraizquierdización significa, además, que ha ampliado sus objetivos a políticas mucho más radicales, que apuntan a hacerse con todo el poder, ahora mediante la igualdad forzada. Sin embargo, la izquierda, a partir del siglo XIX, reelaboró la idea de la suma del poder público, como en la antigüedad y en la Edad Media, pues alcanzó mucho éxito. Basta recordar los regímenes totalitarios de la Europa del siglo XX, y aunque Estados Unidos se mantuvo en parte liberando y bastante liberado de esa influencia, la transformación de la visión constitucional de los federalistas comenzó con la era progresista de 1890 a 1920. y se aceleró con el New Deal de Roosevelt y se multiplicó con Lyndon Johnson y su guerra de la gran sociedad con la pobreza. La crisis financiera del 2008-2009 amplió más el poder del gobierno, a la par que dañó también injustamente al liberalismo. La presencia cuasi imperial de Obama estuvo cerca de eliminar de facto la división de poderes legislativo y ejecutivo, y entre el gobierno federal y los gobiernos estatales, con lo que podríamos pensar que, debido a esa concentración del poder en el gobierno nacional, su usurpación se facilita. Para finalizar ese análisis de esta entrevista de Joao Lemos a nuestro invitado Manny Santos, me gustaría acabando este análisis diciendo que si podemos pensar que existe ese hilo conductor para leer a la izquierda, que es esa idea de que unos pocos ejerzan el máximo poder posible, cualquiera que sea ese medio. Puede ser la fuerza de las urnas, de las armas y de los muros, como en la Unión Soviética del pasado o la Venezuela de hoy, o la concentración del poder económico mediante la presión impositiva en nombre de objetivos morales superiores que ellos mismos determinan desde su gran cerebro centralizado en nombre del resto de las conciencias. Y con este breve análisis acabaríamos de esa primera entrevista que hemos realizado al profesor de caso congresista Manny Santos, elaborada por nuestro coordinador del área de ciencias políticas, el profesor Joao Lemos Estevez. Seguiremos con nuevas entrevistas, con nuevos invitados, analizando la política norteamericana, esa política encauzada en las próximas semanas a las elecciones presidenciales a la Casa Blanca. Muchas gracias.